Hi, I'm Megan.
And I'm John, and this is the Vargas Venture, teaching you how to hack through adulthood.
And today we're going to teach you how to build a resume.
So, we totally get that during COVID, a lot of people have been laid off, and now is a great opportunity to polish up your resume and secure another job. Both me and Megan have been, in the situation of looking for a new job. Luckily, it was before the pandemic, but, she secured a teaching job, and I was able to use my resume to get myself the job that I have now.
This video is part of a series where we are going to help walk you through building your resume all the way to sealing your brand new job.
Okay, so first tip is the value propositions. The value proposition basically is this idea of answering the question, what do you have to offer? So the first thing I would recommend doing before you even start building your resume is think, what makes me unique? What do I have to bring to the table? And once you have those things written down, it'll help you create a good resume and a good cover letter that will show your employer what exactly differentiates you from your competitors. The second tip is doing research on the job you want and looking at what they are looking for. So for example, in marketing, like the job I have now, they're looking for someone who knows SEO, digital marketing, other forms of marketing, digital platforms that they have, and making sure that you can express the knowledge that you need in your resume.
So also in the teaching field, they want to be able to see that you have been in certain types of committees, and so you need to be very specific about the types of committees you've been in. So for example, I've been in a leadership team, so I would put my leadership team committee experience on. They also want to see certain techniques that you know how to do in the classroom. So I also make sure to say that I include gradual release in every single lesson that I teach. So make sure that you're specific about the different techniques that you're in or that you've done and the certain committees that you've been in.
Now, you may not be wanting to look for a marketing job or a teaching job, but whatever the industry is, there are certain industry standards that they are looking for. So make sure to do the research on what those expectations are so you can let your future employer know in your resume that you will fulfill those expectations.
So in tip 3, you need to make sure that your resume is optimized for different softwares that companies use. So if a company is getting a ton of resumes for a certain job position, they need to use a software to make sure that they can go through all those resumes quickly and get the applicants that they're looking for.
So making sure that your resume is ATS optimized is the terminology. We're going to teach you how to do that with the future tips that are coming up. But to avoid your resume getting thrown to the trash by a software, make sure it is ATS optimized. Okay, so the next tip is format and design. So before we get into some of what the tips are, just a reminder, if you stay to the end of this video, I will actually walk you through what my resume looks like so you can see all of these tips and how I implemented them to get the job I have today. So let's talk about the format and design of the resume.
So first and foremost, you need to make sure that your email and phone number and address are all up to date. And don't be putting on your email that's like misskitty123@gmail.com. That is not appropriate. Make sure that you have an appropriate and professional email. So for example, my email is going to be the first letter of my first name and then my full last name @gmail.com. And so that's going to make it easier for any employer that is reading my resume to get in contact with. So a lot of the time you'll hear people say, make sure you buy the fancy resume paper to print your resume out on. And I did that. And so when I would go around to all my interviews that I had, I would go and give them my fancy resume on my fancy resume paper that I spent like $30 on. And they always said that they didn't need it because they'd already printed my resume off. So I wouldn't recommend buying very expensive paper to print your resume out on. Make sure you always have a few copies in hand in case they do print your resume out, but it's really not that important. Unless you're going to a lot of job fairs. If you're going to job fairs, make sure that you carry around with you a ton of your resumes. That way, because if you're at job fairs, you're just interviewing with random companies that you didn't send in your application, and so they're not prepared necessarily to interview you, so you need to make sure that you have a resume.
Which job fairs is one of the tips we're going to use on our next video on how to apply and best practices on that. But yeah, save the trees, okay? Don't be printing on a fancy resume paper.
So another tip that you've probably heard a lot is make sure that your resume is no longer than 1 page. Keep it short and simple. You want to highlight the best features of yourself.
It's true.
Unless you're in certain positions. If you're applying for a teaching position like I was, it's okay if your resume is longer than 1 page, because the principal and administration and everyone else wants to see what you can actually do. So they recommend that you list out all of the professional development and training you've been to. You list out all of your best practices in the classroom. So there are certain professions that it's okay to have longer than 1 page, but make sure you do your research. And if you haven't found that it's okay, then I would keep it to 1 page.
1 page, don't be a fool. Or the next tip, actually, part of format and design, is you want to keep it professional. Avoid adding weird selfies, avoid adding any sort of vernacular that's just awkward or casual. You want to look like, or sound like at least, like you know what you're doing. So make sure to keep everything professional, crisp, clean, and readable, because when you do the design, your design can actually affect your ATS optimization. So if you create a wacky, unprofessional design, then the software is not going to be able to read it, and then your resume is going to get tossed out, and then you're going to be asking yourself, well, why is no one calling me back? Fool, you messed up on your resume. So in format and design, make sure to keep it clean, simple, and professional. So tip number 5 is leveraging your experiences. Now, one of the biggest struggles of finding a job, especially if you're just out of college, is you don't have experience. Kind of annoying. They want you to have experience, but you're just out of college. You need a job to get experience. It's a vicious cycle, but here is the shortcut on how to avoid that vicious cycle, and that is leveraging the experiences that you do have.
But one quick tip is work while you're in college.
Oh yeah.
Even if it's not a job that you think will give you experience for your dream job, get as much experience as you can get in different fields, the better. So, for example, in college and high school, I worked at Pizza Hut. It was not very glorious, but I was able to leverage my Pizza Hut experience to help get me a teaching position. So if you're going into your first year teaching and you're searching for that job, it is difficult. You are going up against veteran teachers who have way more experience than you do. So on my resume, I was able to show all of the skills I used as a shift manager at Pizza Hut and tell them how that is important into a teaching job. So as a shift manager, I had to manage different people who had different personalities. And that's important because you have to manage your classroom, and every single one of your kids has a different personality. I also was able to explain how I had to deal with difficult customers. And that experience is super important when you're dealing with parents, because if you're a parent of a child, I'm sorry, but parents can be really difficult if you're a teacher.
Think about it, every Karen you deal with is helping you in your career. But an example that I have is my first job out of college was selling insurance. And so when I wanted to get a marketing job with very little marketing experience, I used my sales, I used those experience that I had dealing with those customers to translate into a marketing job dealing with franchise owners and helping them. Whatever experience you have, you can definitely utilize, even if it's not the exact experience. It's just leveraging them to help you seal the deal on that job. Okay, so the next section we're gonna talk about is resume don'ts. These are pitfalls that we see people fall through that are just not gonna help you. Okay, so if you follow these don'ts, then you won't look like a fool when you're turning in your resume. It's the whole point of this video is to not look like a fool. The first pitfall is avoid talking about high school. Now, this only really applies if you've graduated from college.
Or you're several years out of high school.
Or, yeah.
Leave it in the past.
It's true, right? You want to highlight recent relevant experiences. And so, you know, one thing I noticed specifically with college graduates, recent college graduates, is that they include, you know, high school, the clubs and activities that they did. No one cares if you were the cheer captain your junior year, okay? That's not gonna help you build a career. Focus on recent relevant experiences. So if you graduated college or you've been out of high school in a long time, just avoid it in your resume altogether. Another thing you want to avoid is putting too many job experience. You want to highlight most relevant and recent experiences, so you're not putting every single little job that you've ever had in your entire life, because that's just gonna be too long. It's gonna, you know, exceed that 1 page rule that we talked about, which does have exceptions, as we mentioned, but you want to keep things short and succinct. That way it's easy to read through and they can easily pick up on what you're about and what your biggest experiences are.
Another tip is you want to avoid putting your GPA on your resume unless your GPA is above a 3.8. If it's below a 3.8, they don't care. They don't even want to read it. They don't really care about what your grades were in college unless you're working on getting your master's. So just avoid putting your GPA unless it's a 3.8 or above. If it's a 3.8 or above, then I would include it because it shows that you worked really hard in college. Another tip is to avoid putting short jobs or burned bridges. So if you only worked at a place for a few months, do not include, because if they call for a reference, if you burned a bridge at a job, you don't want to risk the chance of them also giving you a bad reference. So just be very careful about the job experiences that you're including in your resume.
Another mistake that I see a lot of people making is that they either include only hard skills or only soft skills or no skills at all in their resume. And so basically, just to sum up what the difference is, hard skills are things that you can easily learn, like a certification in this, you're good at math, you know, they're what people think of as skills. Soft skills are the more social, emotional, intelligence skills, like your ability to communicate, your ability to problem solve. So make sure to have a good blend of those in your resume, but also make sure that the ones you highlight are the ones that your targeted employer is looking for. So back to doing your research, figure out what skills are important. The 7th tip that we're gonna talk about today, and probably the most important tip, is to proof everything.
Everything.
Dead butt everything.
Dead butt.
Dead butt. Well, I don't want to say ass.
Well, you want to make sure that you double check all your contact info. Say you put on your favorite boss from your previous job, but you put an 8 instead of a 0 in some place. Then when they keep trying to call your boss and they can't get through, they might think that you made up the reference. So what I would recommend is after you type it in your resume, maybe give it a quick call just to make sure that it's to the right person.
Also, another thing is make sure everything is spelled correctly. Don't be a fool. And one of the ways that I make sure that everything is spelled correctly, because I suck at grammar, is I run it through Grammarly. It's free. You've probably seen ads all over the internet about it. Make sure you spell correctly and make sure the sentences make sense, so that when you turn in your resume,
you sound professional
and you don't look like a fool. And another thing that you should do is get a second pair of eyes to look at your resume, or a third.
And a third. And a fourth. Possibly a fifth.
If you have enough friends to make a fifth, good on you. But you want other eyes because they will be able to point out things that, you know, you might not have been able to, or the proofreading system might not have been able to. And so having an extra set of eyes to help build your resume, and maybe they'll help you highlight, if they're supportive people in your life, they'll help you highlight other skills that you may not have thought of in yourself. Because let's face it, we're all a little insecure.
It's true.
And part of selling yourself is being able to push good qualities about yourself. So find other people to proofread your resume and help it improve. That way, you're not a fool. Next, I'm gonna show you what I did in my resume, so stay tuned. Okay, everyone, thank you for listening to the different tips that we have. So now I'm going to show you my resume and what I did and the decisions I made to get into a marketing job with very little marketing experience. So let's dive right in. So here is my resume. So first thing I want to talk about is the format and the design. As you can see, I kept it very simple, you know, nothing complex. No crazy graphics, and the reason for that is because I want it to be easy for the reader to read the information. You know, the color that I chose, blue, is a very professional color. I also wasn't doing anything crazy with the color scheme. I just kept it simple, but it still looks interesting and fun. That way, you know, if it's printed on a stack, it's gonna stand out, you know, against all of the black and white resumes. And so that I was very cognizant of the design when doing that. Now, some other things about my design, I kept it all on one page, the main resume that I'm sending out on one page. The next piece I want to talk about is the content and what I put into my resume. So as you can see, I have a little slogan tagline because in marketing, you know, taglines are a part of it. It also shows off my personality and a little bit of my value proposition. And so when I sat down and put my resume together, I thought, you know what? I am consistent and dependable, and that is something that I want to convey in my resume. So my specialty is dependability, and that is the part of my value proposition that I included in here. I also did a very brief about me section to offer more opportunity of personality. Right off the bat, you want to be able to quickly explain who you are. So, you know, I love to brainstorm solutions and solve problems that arise. The moment I love most is when all that pays off and I can be proud of my work, right? So it's very short, offers, you know, more of my value proposition. Contact information is also very easy to find and up to date. So make sure it is up to date. I have mine blacked out because I don't want my phone number out there in the public, or my email, because I try to keep that, you know, nice and clean. I also have, you know, some skills. So these skills are specifically targeted for marketing, so you know, Google Analytics, Adobe Creative, social media. So make sure to do research on the job you're looking for and the skills that they are looking for, and then including them. And then some other things I want to talk about, my experience section specifically. So I have it all streamlined. My university experience, since I graduated university, I didn't include high school, and I didn't include my GPA because it was 3.2. You know, so you get degrees, so I didn't need to include that, but I did include the fact that I graduated in May and some, you know, key points of my time there. So whether that's, you know, getting awards or any major leadership roles. So I was student body president, I included that in there because it hits, you know, I had leadership opportunities, and it's also a great way when you get to the interview phase to, you know, bring that up and explore that more. The other experiences I have, so I've had more than 3 jobs in my lifetime, but for streamline's sake, I only included my latest job and the most relevant jobs before that. Now, obviously, depending on your experience and your industry, you're gonna probably want to change that. But in my case, you know, I was the sales producer at Allstate for a while, and I have very specific bullet points that are associated with the job that I'm searching for. So as you can see here, you know, created marketing materials such as newsletter, managed social media accounts. So that wasn't the biggest chunk of what I did in my job, but it relates to, you know, digital marketing. And I gave a very specific example of how my efforts were able to improve my business. So giving specific examples is also going to be another important thing. So if you can put in numbers and statistics, even better. I also included some internships that I did, as well as some other past experiences. So, you know, I did a summer marketing internship and some other stuff while in university. And so using any experience that I had, I was able to really kind of cram that in there and let people know, hey, I have experience, even if it's not traditionally in a full-time marketing position. But there are pieces of my university experience that I can kind of cobble up together and, you know, show off. So this is my first page of the resume.
So thank you for watching. These are all the tips that John and I have used to get our jobs, and I hope that they help you. And please make sure you don't make the same mistakes as us.
Yeah, don't be a fool. And if you don't actually want to spend all the time to put your resume together, then in the description down below is a link to my Fiverr where I can actually help you with your resume. I've done it for many friends, for many other people, of the referrals and other clients, and so I've created a Fiverr page to help people just like you make sure that you have a top-tier resume and don't look like a fool. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe down below. Hit the notification bell.
Somewhere.
I don't really know. We're new. And comment what your favorite tip or what is another tip that you have used to help you be a better person at resume.